Hello, world. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Culture Clinic show where we help HR leaders shape great workplace culture so that your people love where they work. My name is Joe. I'm the co-founder here at Gusto. I've been working very closely with HR professionals for a little over 10 years now, working with them to create recognition programs and help them shape great culture. So excited to be here and always excited to chat with my colleague, Shelly DaCosta. Shelly, maybe give the crew a quick intro.
Sure, I'm thrilled to be here and discussing rewards and recognition in particular. After working in rewards for 30 plus years in a variety of workplaces from healthcare to high tech, retail to insurance, I'd like to say I've seen it all. But workplace is constantly changing and recognition and rewards needs to change along with it, et cetera. So it's great to discuss new and even some tried and true ideas here today.
What a time to be alive, right? What a time to be in the people space. So much going on. Just a reminder for anyone tuning in, this is an Ask Us Anything format. And when I say ask us, I mainly mean ask Shelly, but of course I'm happy to answer questions as well. But feel free to put your questions in the chat. This can be anything related to people and culture, total rewards, recognition, best practices, et cetera, et cetera. But to kind of get things kicked off, we do have a bit of a theme for today, and that is getting leadership buy-in for your recognition program. Super interesting. You know, we have conversations with HR leaders, people leaders all the time, and this is like just a pressing topic, right? Like oftentimes people leaders are the champions of the program, but they need to go and get buy-in from leaders and go get budgets from leaders. And this is not always easy to do. So we've got some questions that have kind of come in advance, but before we even get to those, Shelly, so maybe we can kind of like get kicked off with this question here. So, you know, why is leadership buy-in important?
Oh my goodness, that's probably one of the most critical parts of your recognition program. You need leadership approval for the budget to purchase a program and implement the program, launch a recognition program in the first place. But you need the program to succeed. So you might get leadership approval, but do you have leadership buy-in? You need them to believe in the power of recognition and participate in the program. Post-launch, you know, it's not enough to just have them say, yeah, I've approved it. Okay, here's some resources. It's much more important for them to have full buy-in and understanding of the program, and then to actually use the program and recognize people post-launch, because then you're going to have the success.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on it. I mean, like, you know, coming from sort of like we're in the leadership cap here, right? Like, and with any initiative, if leaders aren't bought in, you're pretty challenged, right? And you're kind of pushing the boulder up the hill. And, you know, the why behind it from a leadership perspective, I mean, at the end of the day, leaders set the tone for culture. And if you want your leaders and managers to act a certain way, if you want your individual contributors to act a certain way, I really do believe that you need to set the example at the leadership level. And specific to recognition, if leaders are seen as people who don't appreciate their colleagues, their peers, their direct reports, I do think that this is going to cascade down throughout the organization. And if leaders aren't doing it, it's hard to ask managers to do it,
exactly.
Right? And there's this, you know, crazy stat out there that, you know, roughly 70% of people leave their job because of a poor relationship with their manager. And so if managers are not doing a good job appreciating their direct reports, I think leaders should be taking some responsibility for that, because obviously that culture hasn't been created. Not to say that like it's just because a manager is going rogue and isn't doing what they need to do and appreciate people, it's the leader's fault. But again, it's all about kind of setting the tone. And so we do need leaders to walk the walk. So what about leaders who are kind of like throwing money at recognition, but aren't actually doing it? Have you seen that in your, you know, your tenure out there in the world? your time at, various, big organizations?
Yeah. So it's really important that they understand a little bit about that why, and that they're, leaders are keen on improving performance, right? They understand that, and boosting the bottom line, right? So, in an ideal world, they also want that people first culture, right? Recognition can help leaders achieve all of that, right? People want to accomplish even more when they're recognized for what they're doing. And so, if leaders throw just the dollars at it and don't buy into it, it's really going to impact the program, right? You certainly see, it's kind of like, oh, we've put the program in, but then your metrics to have them to prove to it that this is why it's working and this isn't working, et cetera, is really key.
Mm-hmm. I think of it a little bit like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like if the leader doesn't buy in but is throwing money at it because, I don't know, maybe there's a lot of internal pressure to do something, in a way, if they're not bought in, it's just not going to happen. And that is, the self-fulfilling prophecy. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts. This was a great question that came in advance, right? Because, we kind of touched on it at the top, but we need to get buy-in for programs like recognition, meaning we often have to go and ask for a budget and sort of like prove to leaders that this is a pressing need. And so this question came in from Gurdeep. So thanks for the question, Gurdeep. What are the key things to do when presenting recognition to leadership?
So, it's important to have your basic presentation framework, right? I always say it's not enough to have this just be some casual conversation with your CEO, right? Because you're asking for budget. This is an important initiative. You want buy-in, etc. So you want that basic framework of a presentation. You don't want it to be too involved, but you want to make sure you get your points across. Right? You want to keep it simple, but have all that backup appendix. You want to know who's in the room is a big part of it, right? Who are you presenting to? And look at the full company-wide view of those people in the room, right? Because, what's the ROI look like for all of those as individuals if they put in a recognition program that you're seeking approval for? Right? What does it mean to the CEO versus what might it help achieve for the CFO? Was what, who's in that room? And it's kind of what's the synergy between them and the common thing that's keeping them up at night, right? So you want to use that information to help you set the framework for your presentation. There's your basic presentation rules about what you want to do and rehearse and present and have the backup and, check your questions ahead of time, have answers for questions, find out who's your champion in the room, have them listen to your presentation in advance. But really, engage leaders as early in the process as you can. Explain your why. That's a big part of the presentation. Why this? Why now? What will it lead to? Why will this lead to either savings or engagement or whatever your ROI or ROV is going to be? But put yourself in the people in the room that you're seeking that, as well as your leaders across the organization. Put yourself in their shoes. What's on their plate? What's keeping them up at night? Because that's really key for your presentation to show how you're going with this program. You're able to make their lives easier, not worse. You're not adding to their plate. Recognition, when properly done, is going to help them with their initiatives. It's going to help them be better leaders. It's going to help the organization with a good return on investment. And look for that common ground between all of those people and show how recognition can help that. So it seems like a lot, but I know you can break it down and have this succinct presentation that's going to hit all those key points.
Yeah, lots of good stuff in there. A few things jump out at me. You mentioned find a champion, and you kind of like quickly mentioned it, but I think there's something, deeper there. Can you talk just a little bit about how you might approach finding a champion on the executive team and, like, I don't know, the angle you could take there?
Yeah. So in particular, if you have an executive team, where people have been in the past, were they working for organizations where they have a recognition program, they're already buying in, they're that leader that's asked you about recognition, or other employees talk about how great that leader is. What is it? What's the secret sauce with that leader? And then you start to have that conversation where you're not setting the agenda, but you're realizing that this leader at the table, they're going to be my yes, they're going to be my supporter. So, find more out about that individual and ask them, are you willing to champion this program? Right. And if so, help me present this in a good way. What else is on the plate of the executive team right now, right here? Are they going to want to hear about recognition if the rest of the items on the agenda that day are Q4 results and results aren't going well? So should I wait and get on a different agenda? Right? All of that key information can be really critical to the buy-in, right? What's going on in the organization? Know about the organization. We like to say HR, when we're most effective, aren't in little ivory towers. We really got our ear to the ground to find out what's going on in the organization so we can be strategic players and support that.
One other thing we hear regularly is around timing. I'd love, there's a lot of priorities at companies, right? And so I'd be interested to get your perspective on sort of like how to time your pitch or your presentation in a way that is sort of like more impactful or just doesn't kind of get like lost in the noise. Any thoughts on that, or any real life examples, or even just like not real life, but just kind of you have enough battle scars to touch on that.
So the key there again is knowing what's going on in the organization and the schedule and the cycle, and what's like, again, keeping your leaders up at night and keeping your CEO up at night. So if your organization is increasing and just doubled in numbers over last year and is extremely successful, and I'm going to say early days of BlackBerry, it's kind of feels like an unlimited pool of dollars that we can use to differentiate ourselves as a great employer and ahead of everybody else. And what more can we do to recognize and reward our employees and make that company stand out? So that's a whole different story on a timing perspective from later days when the coffers are drying up and that organization's watching every budget, right? Every dollar spent. And so they're looking for ways to save dollars. They're looking for tools that are going to help them through these tough times. So again, that's all timing in terms of the program you're offering. What can the program do? How the program can help them through some of those times, but still reward and recognize employees.
That's really interesting. I really kind of like, you touched on how you might have to pivot your presentation or your pitch just a little bit based on the performance of the company, economic headwinds or tailwinds, right? Like when money's abundant and you're, pitching the all-in program, that might be great in that time. And it sounds like, maybe like a time like today where we're facing economic headwinds and uncertainty. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be pitching programs like employee recognition, but we might want to think about the pitch and really kind of like leaning into the value that it delivers. Hey, does the vendor that you're pitching charge for every employee, or do they, have ways that you can sort of like only pay for people who can give recognition, for example, but really sort of extracting value from your vendor.
Sure.
Yeah, cool. So this question came in advance, and I actually put a little bit of thought to it from the leadership perspective. And I just thought I'd kind of like walk through as a leader what I would love to see, and what I'd love to see in a business case. And by the way, we have a template that we can share. So if you like what I mentioned as a template, we have a template, and you can just post in the chat, put your hand up, and we can send this over to you. It's vendor agnostic. So, but the idea here is that it could help you ultimately pitch and get your budget. So, a couple thoughts I had. So one, leaders are really busy. There's lots going on. There's competing priorities, right? So when you're going in for your presentation, be concise and be compelling. Like limit it to 1 to 2 pages, not 30 slides. Start with a headline. What is the recommended action? What's the timeline? What's the outcome? and what's the problem that you're avoiding by taking action. Put in a problem statement. Like, be very specific about the problem you're looking to solve. And then come in with your recommended approach. Here's how we're going to solve the problem. And you may even want to suggest a phased approach, like crawl, walk, run.
Yes.
Right? Economic headwinds. Let's make smaller requests. Let's demonstrate some results. And then that's proof to grow the program. You're going to want to touch on some KPIs. So what are the KPIs, the key performance indicators that are going to be impacted, right? If it's recognition, are we wanting to impact turnover? Do we want to improve our employer brand and see more positive Glassdoor ratings? Do we need to improve our engagement survey scores? And then you might want to pull on some of the emotional heartstrings a little bit, right? Like, tell stories, right? Like internal success stories of how, recognition in a silo has worked for a department, for example. Maybe you want to bring in some examples of case studies and, success stories of potentially even competitors. And then you're going to want to touch on the required investment. Yep. So from my perspective, from the leadership perspective, if you can kind of bundle that into 1 or 2 pages, I think, you're in good shape. And again, if anyone's interested, of course, happy to share that template out.
Absolutely, Joe. That's great. That really kind of puts it all together. It's really about prepping and doing your homework, right?
Know who's in the room, Shelley. Knows in the room. Cool. Let's keep moving along here. Just keeping one eye on the clock. So, metrics. This is another great question. So what metrics are important to share with leadership? Now, next week, our next AMA, my colleague Skay and Kwesi, they're going to go deep on metrics. So some of the KPIs here, but so what are the maybe you can touch on some of the softer metrics that are really important to leadership when you're going in to make the pitch, Shelley?
Well, you want to find out what matters to them right now. What is, is there a burning platform? Can you jump on that burning platform and, or use it, and how you can douse water on it, how you can help them? Because, if their burning platform right now is the global organization is doing something totally different, we want to align. Find out what's going on. Maybe that global organization is launching a recognition program. You can say, hey, we're going to launch one too. We're going to align with that. We're going to look good because we're going to align on a global basis on key initiatives. This is important to us. What are you already measuring, and how can recognition support that? So what are your key metrics right now around engagement, your key metrics around retention, all of those kinds of things, right? And share those with the leadership, and share your story and how recognition can improve those metrics, right? So there's the hard numbers in terms of our ROI, and then there's something we often call like a return on value, right? Because those are the stories, those softer stories about what's really important to people. Find that high-performing individual that works for those leaders at the table, or is one of those leaders at the table, and what's important to them, and be able to pitch your story in terms of, do you're out of our top level of leadership, 80% of them believe in recognition, and were recognized last year, and this is really critical to them. And is that a group of people you'd want to lose? Like that's an important group to retain in your organization. And yet I had a conversation with that person the other day, and it means the world to them that we're implementing a recognition program. Can you tell those soft stories, the NPS scores, though when you do your talks with employees, whether they're in group settings, whatever, what they're telling you that's important to them about why they like working there, and how they feel about their leaders, and how they feel connected, etc. And then the other piece, though, when you're doing all of this, is check your timing again. Like I said, align with other initiatives, values that are going on in the organization. So if they're launching a program globally, can you tie in with that? If you're also launching values in the organization, because we have a new CEO team, they're putting in some new culture and new behaviors that they want, show how recognition can help launch those behaviors and values in the organization. Like that's fabulous, because you're showing this alignment and all of the programs are coming together, which is perfect.
Yeah, I love that. You talked about bringing the stories, like
Yes.
nuts and bolts. How are you like? How are you going to solicit those stories? Like, are you just having real conversations with people? Are you going to leaders and managers and sort of like asking who you should talk to? Like, just maybe like 20 seconds on how we go out and get those compelling stories to then present them up to leadership.
Use your communication team. Look at what's going on your social media platforms, whether it's Slack or Yammer. What are people saying about programs? Are you seeing numbers back on any current recognition programs or service awards that people are saying what meant to them? Exit interviews, the conversations you're having with people that are leaving your organization and why they left. Are there certain types of leaders that seem to be losing employees versus the leaders where they have higher productivity? What's the secret sauce there? Talk to those employees. What are your high performing employees? And you know that you're in human resources, you have some of that data, and then zoom in and have conversations with those employees. Have conversations about why they stay at this organization or why they are thinking of leaving this organization, right? And use that as part of your stories to tell the story of how recognition can support the organization.
So a couple thoughts coming out of that. There's people want to avoid losing more than they want to win. This is like factual, information. And so I think that there's actually an opportunity to leverage loss aversion when we're pitching up to leaders. So a couple things come to mind, right? Like the employer brand is so important for the executive team, right? Like how am I and how is my company perceived out in the world? So when you're thinking about gathering stories, maybe this is an opportunity to go out and look at your Glassdoor rating and come in with some Glassdoor reviews that may not be glowing. Hey, this is what people are saying out in the world.
Yes.
You may even want to come in with competitor reviews from Glassdoor. Like imagine you threw up some reviews that were then revealed, well, this isn't our company, this is that company, right? And if we want our employer brand to sort of like match them, or if we want to become the employer of choice in our space, then we need to think about, doubling down on recognition. So I love the emotional piece that you kind of, wove in there, Shelley. And I think that there is an opportunity to sort of play on this employer brand piece when pitching up to leaders and really trying to, lean into loss aversion, right? Like,
yes,
a lot of these executives are type A. They don't want to lose, more than they want to win. They don't want to lose. So I think that there is an opportunity. And actually, it makes me think, and I'll try to give you the quick version of the story. There's so much. I don't know if you know this, right? So at Gusto, a long time ago, my colleague and co-founder Skay, and I actually, he was Googling reviews about Gusto. And what came up was not, because he wanted to see what customers were saying about us. And what came up was a 1-star Glassdoor review by one of our employees. It was like this crazy aha moment. Here we are, I know, but you know what? It's part of our story. It's part of our journey, right? It's this aha moment. Here we are out in the world selling recognition. And frankly, we weren't doing a good enough job of it internally. I'll preface that with, it was, early in the company. We were just like scrapping to sort of, get things off the ground. And we were more focused on building the product and bringing on new customers. It's not like we were bad people. We just, we just had our priorities a little bit out of whack. And so that was the aha moment for us, that we said, we're tripling down on recognition. We're using the platform that we built to help other companies. And since that time, we've 10x our revenue, we've 5x our headcount. You look on Glassdoor, the reviews are amazing. By no means are we a finished product. We're always working to get better. But the idea here is that seeing that 1-star review was the gut punch that we needed to just shake us into action. And we took action and we tripled down on culture and recognition. So, that worked for us. I think it can work for, others who are trying to make the compelling argument up to leadership.
It's such a perfect example, Joe, because just think about it. Like, that's what we're telling, the group listening today, hopefully, is like, find the aha moment. Find what that aha moment is for your executive, your founder in your organization, or your leaders, that will help turn the tide for them, help them go, oh my goodness, I can't believe we're not doing this, or this could help this, or what's going on, right? Like, find that aha moment when you drill into that and how that's important to them. That's really key.
Totally. Love it. I just got emotional there thinking about it.
That's great.
How times have changed. Okay, just keeping one eye on the clock here. Last or second to last question, Shelley. Any other strategies, or what other strategies do you recommend to generate buy-in from leadership? We've talked about a few things already. Anything else come to mind, or anything you want to just kind of like really drill home here for the team?
Yeah, we talked about the champion, the leadership champion. We talked about interviewing your high performers. I think go out there and see what's going on in your organization externally, like you said, with competition. Find out what the competition is doing, because that can be really important to people. So, is well, we want to keep up with that. What do you mean they're a top 100 employer and it's because they have a recognition program, or it's contributing to that? How can we do that as well? Even LinkedIn. I remember it being extremely powerful when I was able to show an executive some LinkedIn comments from not only our employees that said about a program we had launched, how great it was and how it meant so much to them to be working for an organization that did that. But a colleague of that person from another organization jumped in, a competing organization, and said, wow, I wish my company had done programs like that. And that, it was like that CEO, that was really important to them, that there were people out there working for the competition that were envious of what we were doing in our organization. That was a bit of the secret sauce, and it was just because of social media and people talking about what meant a lot to them when they received this reward, or what the organization was doing for them.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And one thing that occurs to me, I would say, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was skepticism around the impact of recognition amongst a cohort of leaders and executives. If there's skepticism now, it's probably from a lack of knowledge, right? Like, there's so much data that supports the impact of recognition. Like, it's a mountain. Harvard Business Review just continues to put out articles and studies, and like, so my point is, there's a mountain of data that you can use to support your argument when pitching up to leadership. We've got lots we can share with you, like, right? These are third-party articles, studies, Harvard Business, state of the workplace, all sorts of, really, really powerful pieces of information. And, rather than taking those and forwarding those, what you might want to do is pull out some of those, key snippets, and, highlight where leaders and executives sort of, should be reading, or just pull out those key statistics and share those with your leaders, because it might be mind-boggling if they don't know this information. So cool. So one eye on the clock. We're half past. I think we got through the questions. Before we sign off, Shelley, any key takeaways from our conversation here today?
Yeah, I still go back to, putting yourself in their shoes. What's on their plate? The role of leader in an organization is harder today than it ever has been before. There's just so much more. Today's time, people want to work from home. No, they don't want to work from home. They want to be in the office. No, they don't. We have a crisis with mental health. We have so much going on, and we keep adding more. So find out what's going on with your leaders and how recognition can help them achieve their goals and help look for that common ground. I mean, recognition isn't adding to their plate, and you need to be able to show them it's actually making their plate easier. Leaders want to go from A to B, and you saying, oh, well, I want you to take this side turn off and go over here to D. It's how to show them that actually using recognition is part of that, them getting to B and what they want to achieve as leaders, and it can help their plate easier. And timing can be everything, right? Mm-hmm. When you pitch that and how you pitch that and what else is going on in the organization on that day, that time, that quarter, that month, that's really important.
Cool. Yeah, a couple things stood out to me. You mentioned, find your champion. I thought that was very actionable. So that was a key takeaway for me. Bring in the human emotional aspect. I really loved your point about sort of like weaving in real stories. And so following on that for me, I think a couple things, takeaway in the conversation was leaning into the impact a lack of appreciation is having on your employer brand and how that can sort of like inspire action in your leaders. And then when you're pitching, be concise, be compelling. And I would suggest, especially with economic headwinds, to make smaller requests, demonstrate results, and then grow the program.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good.
Okay. I think that's all. So, Shelley, always a pleasure. Love chatting with you.
Thank you.
All sorts of wonderful pearls. For those who want to join us, we'll be on same time next week. My colleagues Skay and Kwesi will be talking about, we'll be digging deep into the metrics and the ROI of recognition. So with that, thank you. And if you want to continue to follow some of the content we put out, you can go to YouTube, and check out the Gusto channel and subscribe, and don't miss a beat. Thanks so much.
Thank you.